Right, so greetings, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Philosophy Club here in Little Patette in the middle of France. And cold, wintry day, but there are little glimmers of spring-like light appearing, and it's a bit warmer, and that's good news. So we'll just quickly go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Thomas, the philosopher. Happy to host this weekly event, and I've been doing it faithfully. Do you want to introduce yourself, sir?
Well, I'm Jan, one of your neighbours. I've been invited to this club after I've been around here. And
You just moved here from Anglesey, haven't you? From
I
Wales.
did. I did.
Yeah. But you're originally from Norway.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, fascinating. So you speak Norwegian and English.
Yes, and Swedish and Danish and a bit of German and
Okay. And you were in the Merchant Navy for Norway for a while.
yeah,
Like 20 years or something.
thereabouts. Yeah.
And you saw all around the world.
Yep.
Amazing. And am I right in thinking your ancestors were some kind of Viking chieftains? That's a family legend?
Yeah,
is it
that's
true?
a family legend. I don't know. I haven't gone that far back, but I mean we're
It would fit.
the so-called Vatna king I've heard about, which was one of the small kings. There were hundreds and hundreds of kings
Yeah, before
those
it was a centralised monarchy,
Yeah,
there were little
yeah.
kinglets.
yeah,
Like in that series called Vikings.
white kings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all fighting each other. Yeah, well, we're probably distant relatives because one of my genealogical roots is through the Normans, who were Vikings who landed in France.
Yeah.
And I have, my father was from that descent. So that's exciting. Anyway, welcome.
Good.
Good. Mari, just introduce yourself, say hello.
Hello. I always find it difficult to introduce myself because anyway the former sentence I am feels false in some way because identity is a mistake. But I am Mari. I'm from Finland. I mostly call myself a poet these days, a wandering poet. I did my degree in political science, and since then I have been where the spirit takes me. That's what I would say.
That's great, yeah. Okay, welcome, and pleasant to have you here visiting the Museum of the Muses. And we've been doing some good work together. Great, so welcome.
I'm Noah. The camera knows my name
Yeah,
from a few couple of times before.
sure.
Should I introduce myself further? I mean,
Well, you're from this area, and you have Dutch origin, don't you?
hi.
Originally, but you're sort of adopting France as your place to be
Yep.
for now. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, and we've done lots of work in the Philosophy Club before, together. So that's excellent, and you've been hopefully learning lots.
Hi.
Yeah.
Sure did.
And you were mostly home educated, weren't you?
Yep.
But you speak fluent French, brilliant English, Dutch. Like a cosmic citizen, I'd say.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome. Right, so what's been happening this week? That's the first thing I normally run through. Well, I'll start with some academic work I've been up to. I've been working on the American Indian culture, and way back in 1999, I wrote an article, paper, huge, 35 pages, for the then, what was called the Encyclopedia of Applied Ethics, which is an academic thing. About philosophy and ethics, and I'd been lecturing and teaching at the University of London, and I ended up specialising in primal or pagan religions. It was a time when nobody was really interested in indigenous knowledge among my colleagues, and I got the job of being London's expert in primal religions. So I was asked to write this article, and because I was born in Canada and I've always been interested in Native American spirituality, it's one of the boxes on the table that we might look at later. And I suppose I've always respected the American Indian way of life. When my father died, I was only 17 at the time. He got premature Alzheimer's and died off. At the service, I remember reading out a quote from an American Indian chief from Alberta. Instead of reading something from the Bible or something. I was only 17, but I'd already found my way to American Indian spirituality. And then, of course, I read Carlos Castaneda, the great Mesoamerican, sage, and writings about Don Juan, his teacher, and was totally interested in all that. So I've had this long, deep interest in this stuff. Anyway, long story short, I was asked to do an update of the article, and it's being published later this year. And so this encyclopedia will be in all academic libraries around the world. And it's, of course, given me a chance to revisit what I wrote and check on updates and things. And it's interesting, there's much more interest now in American Indian spirituality and ethics. And of course, this relates very much to the news we're getting from America with Trump's inauguration. His relationship with the Native American traditions doesn't seem to be very well thought out, I would say, because absolutely key to their understanding is the importance of the land, the importance of ecology, the animals living in harmony with all of nature, which comes from Great Spirit. Whereas Trump is thinking like a businessman, and how can we exploit, how can we do more drilling, how can we get out of the Paris Treaty, etc., etc. So there's a sort of clash, cosmological clash between Trumpism and the actual native traditions of the continent. So I'm going to be watching that with interest. And yes, I've discovered some great, academics writing about all this. And there's a Finnish professor at the University of Oxford who's done a detailed study of the history of American Indian culture for the last 20,000 years. One of the things that, 100 years ago that people used to say is the American Indians have only just come to the continent. They only came, 10, 12,000 years ago. But actually archaeologists have pushed this further back. We now know they've been there for 60,000 years, as long as in Europe, advanced humans. And so it's, it's a question of respecting the local knowledge keepers, the wisdom elders. So that's one thing I've been doing, and that was very exciting. I've also been working, continuing to work with the Search for Peace at this critical time in the history of the world, and joining various meetings, mostly online, and attending a restorative justice gathering that was important, and also attended a very interesting Jungian seminar of the Scientific and Medical Network about the shadow with some leading Jungians, because the shadow is very much at work in this demonization we're seeing. People think the other person is the enemy. So in the Ukraine-Russia war and the Gaza-Palestine-Israeli war, we're seeing a lot of shadow projection going on. And how can we resolve that? What does Jung's theories of psychology, what light can they shed on that? So I've been thinking a lot about that, and it so happens I wrote my doctoral thesis about all that, like a long time ago now, and yet I'm really frustrated that world leaders seem to be able to rise to power who don't have the intellect to work out this stuff. And they rise to power in these combative political systems that are premised on demonizing the other guy, the left or the right or whatever, instead of trying to integrate. And the American Indian culture can teach us about holistic politics, because when they had to make a decision for the tribe, they would sit in the council house, and people would occupy and sit in the position of the north, south, east and west, representing the four elements, earth, air, fire, water. And they would speak from that position. What would fire say about this decision? What would earth say? Earth being conservative, and so let's not do anything to rock the boat. What would air say? Well, that's vision. Let's have a new way of thinking. What would water say? Well, that's kind of emotions. What do we feel about this? And gradually they'd go around the group and reach a consensus. And often what we think of as polarities are just truths spoken from different perspectives. And if we tolerate and allow the other person's perspective as valid and listen to each other, then we can reach consensus. That was the American Indian way. And it was brought into a centre by Deganawida, who was like the Moses or the great peace teacher of the American Indian culture, about 1300 BC, 1300 AD, but before the whites came, apart from the Vikings. And so I've been, I lament the fact that we don't have that wisdom in our political formulae. We have this oppositional thing, left-right, which goes back to the French Revolutionary Parliament. Why don't we sit from left, right, centre, above, below, and get all perspectives on issues? Well, that would be intelligence. So anyway, that's what I've been up to. I also went to a very good talk by a writer who's come to La Creuse. She's the writer in residence here, Elisa Bayram, who's written a novel, a couple of novels, one about the future. How will France be 100 years from now? How will we have sorted out all our problems? She's using fiction to tell truth. And it so happens I've also written a novel about the future in the same kind of genre. She's called a novelist of the imagination. Well, I've written a similar thing, only mine is set much, much further in the future. Yes, and also I can announce we've found the centre of France this week. The actual centre, there's an official photograph of me and Mari in the centre of France. It's about 20 kilometres from here. And I knew it was the centre of France, but I didn't know they knew, and I didn't know they'd put up a sort of a thing. So that's exciting. And so that's quite symbolic, because I'm saying we should speak from the centre of things, taking account all directions. Well, so that's what I'm doing here, trying to do that for. And it was a Druid stronghold here, so a Celtic wisdom keepers. The Druids were exactly the same as the American Indian shamans. They're the same people, I think, just in different sides of the Atlantic. So that's what I want to share to begin with. And then I just want to re-announce the 99 Names of Peace, which has come, it's been published. My daughter Sophia helped me, with the visioning of it. And she is going to be doing some illustrations for it in the future. So let me ask Mari to come up with a name between 1 and 99, and then I'll read out a bit about the project. Choose
A name or number?
Number.
And a number between 1 and 99.
77.
77. Okay, that's going to be in volume 2. And we have this super index now. Okay. Oh. Ha! Well, here we are. We've had some discussions about this. This is interesting. Okay, the project is called The Astrology of Peace. And it's page 871. And the language is Oromo, page 860. So each number has two things, a language from a different part of the world. And this one is from Ethiopia. And it's spoken by the Oromo people with 41.7 million speakers, making up to 33% of the Ethiopian population. I've always loved Ethiopia. I've never been there in this life, but it's an amazing, rich culture, and it was one of the very earliest Christian countries in the world. They have ancient Bibles that include the books of Enoch, or the Book of Enoch, whereas the Latin and Greek Bibles got rid of that. So they have their own access to Christianity. Oromo is the language with the fourth most speakers after Arabic, Swahili and Hausa in the whole of Africa. So it's quite an important language. And in this text, I give the history of it. I'm sad to say that Haile Selassie, who was very strictly Ethiopian Orthodox Christian, didn't like the Oromos because they're mainly Muslims. And it was banned in education. And even it was banned in conversation. And I do say, but why, one might ask, did Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, regarded by Rastafarians as a divine ruler sent by God, implement policies that marginalise the Oromo people, including banning the use of the Oromo language? So this is a theme that comes up in the book, because language is very political, you know, and nations like to just have their own language spoken. But I think, and there's a famous quote I found by one ruler, one intellectual, who was actually involved in the early Zionist movement. And he said, what is a nation? It's a language with an army. Which is like really simple, straightforward definition. But I think we need to move to a more sophisticated understanding of what language is for. It's for communicating truth, for doing philosophy, for sharing ideas, writing poetry. You know, it's for lovers to exchange their secrets, and no one language is better than any other. I think Oromo is an amazing language. And when I researched it, you know, I fell in love with it. It has two grammatical genders, masculine and feminine, all nouns are one or the other. And that's something else that's interesting about language, because not all languages have those two genders, some have three. And I found a language which doesn't have any gender at all.
Finnish doesn't have gender.
Doesn't it?
No, not at all.
Okay, well there we are, there's an example. So anyway, one can learn a lot from this. And here's a 19th century visitor, a French guy, Charles Xavier Rocher d'Héricourt, visited Ethiopia in 1863. And he said, the Oromo people are the most beautiful in Africa. They're not originally from Abyssinia, they came there by invasion. They are in general well built. They have a tall figure, a broad and raised forehead, an aquiline nose, a well-cut mouth, a copper complexion. Their hair is braided into small braids which float around their heads and mix something graceful with the expressive and noble character of their physiognomy. Accustomed from the most tender youth to ride horses, they're excellent horsemen and insensitive to the harshest fatigue, full of courage and valour in combat, and industrious and skillful in farming. This great nation could, led by an enterprising leader, make itself master of the whole of Africa. So that's 1863, you know. Anyway, fascinating people. And I discovered, of course, the point of doing this is to find, their religion. Their religion is Wakifana. This is the indigenous religion. Before, a lot of them are Muslims now, but originally this is it. And there's still a lot of them left. Here's one of their prayers. O wonder, the wonders are six. The hornbill complains without being sick. The plant flourishes without nourishment. The water runs without being urged. The earth is fixed without pegs. The heavens hold themselves up without supports. In the firmament, Waka has sown the chickpeas of heaven. These things fill me with wonder. Let us all pray to God. O God, who has caused me to pass the day, cause me to pass the night well. So Waka is the name for the creator of the universe. And he has helpers called the Ayana, who are intermediary spirits between God and the creations. And, you know, I give a lot of detail, of course, about that. And then finally I come to the words of peace, which are, you know, interesting. And the main word for peace is nagar. Peace magic is sikhri, nagar. And peace studies would be ko anu nagar. peacemaking, Nagar, Busunu. Now, I don't know the etymology of Nagar. I mean, the next edition of this book, I want to work with an Oromo etymologist who can provide that data and all the other 99 languages. Because I think if you drill down into the origin of all these words, Nagar, we can find the core Kabbalistic runic origins of that. N is usually a sound relating to the interior of being, as in the word in, and also nirvana. It's a very quiet sound, and it relates to the nose. And also nous, which is the Greek word for intellect. So I've discovered in my researches that N words usually relate to interiority, and I'm sure that Nagar in Oromo would not be an exception to that rule. So, okay, that's the language. And then it comes with the project. And this one is the astrology of peace. Now this is just, you might think, a maverick project, what's that doing in it? 99 peace projects, how can that help the world? You know, why is that important? Well look, millions and millions of people believe in astrology all over the world. It's a thing, it's a big thing, it's a huge industry. And quite a few of them practice the astrology of war, professionals. Reagan fixed some of his key meetings, you know, by advice from Nancy Reagan's astrologers. Modi and the Indian government and the Indian nationalists, Hindu nationalists, fix their attacks on the Muslims by Hindu astrology. Hitler used astrologers to time some of his invasions. And Putin, likewise, I bet 100% that he was advised by astrologers when to attack Ukraine, because they realise its power. And so they're working with the synchronicity of the heavens to time the attack. Well, I'm saying let's invent something called the astrology of peace. And let's find the most propitious time to do peace conferences, ceasefires. I mean, I'm sure that it's being used in Israel as well. There are many great astrologers in Israel using it probably for war. So let's accept, you know, we can accept astrology suspending judgment, how it works, whether it's true or what philosophically. But what I've done in the book is shown how so many great thinkers, like Michael Scotus, an important Christian sage at the court of the Emperor Frederick II, 1175 to 1232, from Scotland, he was the astrologer royal. John Dee, one of my heroes, was the astrologer royal to Queen Elizabeth I. You know, etc. The history of astrology is fascinating. And the greatest king of Spain, Alfonso X, the Wise, was also understood the importance of astrology, and he had Arabic astrology books translated into Spanish and Latin. I think astrology teaches sort of human positioning in the cosmic synchronicity of the heavens and the earth, and it goes back to very ancient times. Anyway, I described the project, and I want to work with professional astrologers or competent ones and invent a new thing called the astrology of peace. It doesn't exist yet. There isn't a single book in the world of it. I think it's a long time overdue. Okay, there we are. That's the choice, 77. And it's just one of the 99 projects. So I'm going to choose one a week from now on. Okay?
Cool.
And we can gradually go through them.
I only know 2 so far.
Yeah. Okay, right, let's go round again with this time the periodic table. So why don't you choose, Jan? You go first.
I have been looking at 100 and what was it? It was 135. Christian Rastafari.
Yeah. Talk of the devil. We mentioned them earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a
We
good
talked
one
about
to
Haile
choose.
Selassie.
Yeah. Right, we'll do that. Mari, what are you going to go for?
I don't know yet. Can I take a moment?
Sure. Noah, have you got one?
Have you had the Kahuna recently? 18?
Not for a while. That's a good one. Number 80, is it?
Yes.
I can't see the number.
Oh,
Can you
sorry.
point to it?
Here it is, in the left corner.
Ah,
Here.
I see, 18. Right. Great. Okay, well, yeah, we'll do that. That's Hawaii.
I think I'll choose 154 materialism.
Okay. 154, is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Well, those are all very interesting. So let's start. We'll go round in that order. Okay. Let's start with the Rastafarian first. And I mention it because I talked about Ethiopia. That came up in our choice, number 77. Can I ask if you've studied it at all or met Rastafarians?
Not in any depth, but I've been spent a lot of time in Caribbean and
Okay. In Jamaica and places?
Jamaica,
Ah,
Cuba, Curacao,
okay.
Netherlands, Antilles, as such.
Right. And so you met them there, I suppose?
Yeah, I met them, seen them, heard about them, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Okay, remind me the number again, I've lost it.
So did I. It's
100.
100 and
Oh, it's in the second row, 135.
35.
Yeah. I just want to make sure I've got the right page open. Yes. So I'm obviously living in Britain for many years. I met quite a few Rastafarians in Britain, in Brighton, in London, and I got very interested in when I discovered the Ethiopian Bible includes the Book of Enoch, because that's something that I've done a whole commentary on, which is on my Green University website. And it, I still have not found anyone that can explain how that happened. I was at a webinar a couple of years ago with a Portuguese scholar who studied a lot about Ethiopia, but he couldn't tell me, and he couldn't tell me who I could ask. I discovered a Portuguese history of Ethiopia was written in the 1600s, but I haven't yet found any reference in that to the Book of Enoch. Why is their Bible different? Because it's not the only book. They also have the Book of Jubilees. So it's quite interesting. There's a more Gnostic current going down there, and I think Ethiopian Rastafarians, who it developed mostly in Jamaica in the diaspora of slave cultures who were taken to Jamaica from Africa, and it was put together by Marcus Garvey and others, Leonard Howell, Edward Blyden, people in Jamaica who was researching, wanted a kind of Christianity that was African based, because they were sick of the kind of Christianity that was justifying slavery and white supremacy and the kind of Trumpist kind of Christianity. No, African Christianity's older than all that. And so they came up with an adulation, particularly of Ethiopia, which is the oldest Christian country in Africa, arguably. Although there were Christians in Egypt before, and they actually were the ones that evangelized Ethiopia. So they worshipped Jah, the name for God, and of course it became quite a big movement in the 70s with reggae. The Wailers put this thing on the global agenda with their amazing music, and it was a music of resistance, so against racism, against the relics of slavery, and that whole superiority idea that one is defined by the colour of one's skin instead of the quality of your soul, as Martin Luther King said. So it has its roots in the black resistance to racism. As a spiritual antidote, what I love about the Rastafarians is every man in the Rastafarian movement is called a king, and every woman is called a queen. So when I met an amazing Rastafarian in Brighton, you know, he'd set up a shop in the lanes selling all kinds of Caribbean stuff and African stuff, and he's a really tall black guy, just brilliant eyes shining with light, and our eyes met, and you know, I was in my Druid sort of walkabout Brighton, and he said, come in, King, you know. And we had an amazing hour-long chat about the universe, the cosmos, and he gave me an amazing book, I think I bought it, on Babylon and the corrupt powers that rule this world, and how the greatest thing we can do is resist intellectually. So they love the Bible, they use it, and we ended up having a really deep rap. And they also believe that marijuana, or ganja as they call it, is an advancement for the intellecting. So intellecting is what we do with the mind, using it properly, as Abelard said. But if you take the sacrament of ganja, it ups the level at which you can intellect, and it takes it up into the transpersonal sphere. And they believe that's a holy sacrament. So to smoke ganja together in a small group is to do divine conversation. It's not something to trivialise or play around with or do like a party trick. I think Westerners don't understand the power of ganja. And I've also experienced this several times with deep people who've initiated me into the correct use of ganja as a sacrament. I do it very seldom, but when I do it, it's a very deep experience. And I think they're right. I think this is a sacred thing. And that's interesting. Also, I've got a book about Christian gnosis, which argues that, and it's by a Rastafarian scholar, that Moses was, you know, I mean, how come the bush was burning? You know, it was a very, very strong ganja vision he was having. This is their theory. And that ganja was used in the Temple of Jerusalem as an incense burner, so when you went in, it made you very, very high. You could see Yahweh dancing, you know, in the spheres. And so that's why you couldn't go in. Normally, only the high priest, right? So, you know, so there's a lot of things fall into place in the Rastafarian worldview, and I think their music is joyous. Reggae is an amazing, joyous dance music. I went to see the Wailers live in Bristol when I was studying philosophy, and in the 70s. It's a joyful thing, and that's what true spirituality should be about. And we don't want to put it in Rasta language. We don't want no more slavery, you know. And nowadays everybody's slaves to the system of the Elon Musk types and techno brothers and surveillance cops and you know what, tax men, the whole works. That's all Babylon that's going down, say the Rastas. And I love that faith of theirs. I hope it comes true. A lot of them are vegetarian. They follow compassion rules in ethics. They're non-violent, but you know they can also be warriors if they have to. So it's. I think it's a profound choice actually, and it is a form of Christianity. And I think if Christ was around, he would love what they've done. And I think I'm glad Jamaica's part of the Commonwealth, because I run the Commonwealth Interfaith Network and set it up back in the 90s, and they're part of our brotherhood, you know.